Good evening, everyone, and Shabbat Shalom. I think you're out there. I can hear you. I can't see you. Blinded by the light. I am thrilled to be joined tonight on the Bima by Dr. Samuel Adler. Of course, we could not resist the opportunity to showcase his Jewish music this evening as well. And I'm also thrilled to be able to sing with Kol Zimra this evening. Welcome to our choir. We are going to begin this evening with Lechuna Ranana. Let us sing out to God on page 130 of your prayer book, page 130.
Naria, let's
continue now with the lighting of the Shabbat candles on page 120 and 121. And I am excited to call up to light the candles for us this evening our bar mitzvah of tomorrow morning, Max Rhodes. And Max, if you could bring with you your family, Mom Megan, Dad Tiger, and Sister Julia.
As these Shabbat candles give light to all who behold them, so may we, by our lives, give light to all who behold us. As their brightness reminds us of the generations of Israel who have kindled light, so may we, in our own day, be among those who kindle light. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kidshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lahadlik ner shel Shabbat. Blessed are you, Adonai our God, sovereign of the universe, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to kindle the light of Shabbat.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech ha'olam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Let's turn to page 138 and join in Lecha Dodi.
Lecha Dodi likrat kala l'nei Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala l'nei Shabbat mekabela. Shamor v'zachor b'dibur echad ishmi'anu el hamiuchad. Adonai echad u'shemo echad l'shem ultiferet v'litila. Lecha Dodi likrat kala l'nei Shabbat mekabela. Lecha Dodi likrat kala l'nei Shabbat mekabela. Likrat
עטרת בעלה, גם בשמחה ובצהלה, תוך אמוני ים סגולה, בואי חלה, בואי חלה. לך דודי לקראת עלה, פני שבת נקבלה. לך דודי לקראת עלה, פני שבת נקבלה.
I'd like to invite Max forward, who will help lead us in the service this evening, and we will continue with the Chatzi Kaddish on page 144.
Yitgada v'yitgada hirute v'yamlich mahute behaye hon uvyome hon uvayevreho beYisrael bagala agala uvizman kariv ve'imeru amen. Yehi Shemei Rabba Mevora Le'alam Ula Le'amaya Yitbarach V'yishtaba V'yitpa'ar V'yitroman V'yitnaseh V'yitadar V'yitaleh V'yitala Shemei Dekutcha Parehu Le'ela minkor shirata tushbehata v'neh emata da'amiran b'leman v'imeru amen.
Let's turn to page 146 and stand for the Baruch Hu.
Baruch Hu et Adonai HaMevorach. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach le'olam va'ed.
Let's read together on page 149 at the top. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Your wisdom sets the way on which time and season glide. Your breath guides the sail of the stars. Creator of time and light, you guide the current of day into night. As heaven spans to infinity, you set its course for eternity. Praise to you, Adonai, our God, from whom the evening flows. Baruch atah Adonai, Ha'ba'ariv Aravim.
Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad.
Let's join together in the Ve'er Havta, page 154.
Please be seated.
Ve'ahavta et Adonai Elohecha b'chol levavcha u'b'chol nafshecha u'b'chol me'odecha v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele asher anohi mitzavecha hayom al levavecha Vishinantam levaneha vidivarta bam Vishiteha beveteha uvleteha vadere uvishobeha ukumeha ukshartam leot al yadeha vehayu letotafot beineneha Utartam amizuzot beteha uvishareha leman tiskeru vasitem et kol mitzvotai vehim kedoshim Eloheim ani Adonai Eloheim Asher hotzeiti etem me'eretz Mitzrayim lehiot lahem Elohim ani Adonai Eloheim.
Let's read together at the bottom of 154. You shall love Adonai your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your might. Take to heart these instructions with which I charge you this day. Impress them upon your children. Recite them when you stay at home and when you are away, when you lie down and when you get up. Bind them as sign on your hand and let them serve as symbol on your forehead. Inscribe them on the doorposts of your house and on your gates. Thou shalt remember to observe all my commandments and to be holy to your God. I am Adonai your God, who brought you out of the land of Egypt to be your God. I am Adonai your God. Adonai Elohechem Emet. Please turn to page 157 and let's read responsively. In a world torn by violence and pain, a world far from wholeness and peace, give us the courage to say, Adonai, there is one God in heaven and earth.
Declare your glory. May earth reveal your justice and love.
From bondage in Egypt we were delivered. At Sinai we bound ourselves to your way.
Inspired by prophets and instructed by sages, time and again we overcame oppressive forces.
Though our failings are many and our faults are great, it has been our glory to bear witness to our God, keeping alive in dark ages your vision of a world redeemed. Let us continue to work for the day
when the nations will be one and at peace. And shall we rejoice as Israel did, singing on the shores of the sea. Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi chamocha nedar ba'kodesh, nor adinot osefem. Malchutecha
ידע אדוני את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו. ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
Page 160. Grant, O God, that we lie down in peace and raise us up, our guardian, to life renewed. Spread over us the shelter of your peace. Guide us with your good counsel. For your name's sake, be our help. Shield and shelter us beneath the shadow of your wings. Defend us against enemies, illness, war, famine, and sorrow. Distance us from wrongdoing. For you, God, watch over us and deliver us. For you, God, are gracious and merciful. God, our going and our coming, to life and to peace evermore. Blessed are you, Adonai, guardian of Israel, whose shelter of peace is spread over us, over all your people Israel, and over Jerusalem. Baruch atah Adonai, Anu ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת, את השבת, לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. ביני ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם. כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ, וביום השביעי שבת ויהי נפש.
Please rise for tefillah on page 164.
Adonai sefatai tiftach ufi yagid tehilateha. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu Elohei Avotenu v'Imotenu Elohei Abraham Elohei Yitzhak Elohei Yaakov Elohei Sarah Elohei Rivka Elohei Rahel Elohei Leah Ha'el Hagadol Hagibor V'Hanora El Elyon Gomel Hasadim Tovim Vekonei Hakol Vezoher Haste Avot V'Imahot Umevim Yelam Evneihem Leman Shemo Be'Hava Mele Ozer Umashina Umageh Baruch atah Adonai Megain Abraham Bezrat Sarah Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai Mehageh Hakol Atah Rafi Hoshia Mehakel Hayim Behesed Mehayeh Hakol Berachamim Rabim Somech Noflim Berohei Cholim Umasir Asurim Umekayem Emunato Lishenei Afar Mikamo Haba Al Gevurot Umido V'ne'eman atah lehayot hakol. Baruch atah Adonai mehayeh hakol. Baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha'kadosh.
Let's turn to page 175 and read together, Ever-present One, may we, your people Israel, be worthy in our deeds and our prayer. Wherever we live, wherever we seek you, in the land, in Zion restored, in all lands, you are our God, whom alone we serve in reverence. Baruch atah Adonai, she'otecha levadecha b'yira na'avod. We continue on page 177. When we behold your heavens, the work of your fingers, the moon, the stars, and that you've set in place, what are we humans that you are mindful of us? We mortals that you take note of us. You made us little less than divine, adorned us with glory and majesty. You gave us dominion over your handiwork, laying the world at our feet. How majestic is your name throughout the earth. Baruch atah Adonai, hatov shimcha u'lecha na'el.
You may be seated.
Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Shalom Rav Yisrael Amcha Tasim Leolam. Ki atah hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Ki atah hu melech Adon lechol hashalom. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. V'tov be'einecha levarech et Amcha Yisrael bechol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha tasim leolam. Tasim leolam. Tasim leolam.
On page 179, let's read the prayer for peace together. Grant us peace, your most precious gift, O eternal source of peace, and give us the will to proclaim its message to all the peoples of the earth. Bless our country as a safeguard of peace, its advocate among the nations. May contentment reign within our borders, health and happiness within our homes. Strengthen the bonds of friendship and fellowship among all the inhabitants of every land. Plant virtue in every soul, and may the love of your name hallow every home and every heart. Praised are you, Eternal One, who blesses our people with peace. Baruch atah Adonai, hamarech et amo Yisrael b'sholom.
At this time in our Shabbat service, we pause to think of those in our congregational community and our families and our larger communities who are in need of healing. If you'd like to share the name of a loved one for healing, whether healing of body, mind, or spirit, I invite you to do so now. We join together in our prayer for healing, the Mishaberach, on page 371. Mishaberach Avotenu Mekor HaBracha Leimotenu. May the source of strength, who bless the world, our lives a blessing, and let us say, Amen. Mishaberach Imotenu Mekor HaBracha Lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing with refuah shlema, the renewal of body, the renewal of spirit, and let us say, Amen.
Let's take a few moments of silent prayer. Last week, I began my Dvar Torah with a complaint about having two Torah portions which would not hold great interest for me or, for that matter, for anyone in our time. Well, I have to swallow my words, for after carefully studying this week's parasha, several intriguing subjects came up which, more than some others, have great relevance in our time, as well as even in our lives, when we examine them more closely and see the connections. First of all, the beginning of the parasha is this: Vayedaber Adonai el Moshe b'har Sinai lemor. And God spoke to Moses at or in Mount Sinai, saying. Well, this is very strange, since we're in the book of Leviticus and the Israelites are way past Sinai. And in most cases, in this book, as well as in other books of the Torah, when God speaks to Moses, it's usually in the tent of meetings. Now, many scholars and rabbis have wrestled with this problem, and the explanation seems to be that this very important chapter, which we're dealing with today, deals with possessions, poverty, slavery, and indemnity, as well as the conditions stemming from these discussions were so important to the editors of the Chumash that they imposed the Sinai location upon this. In just very few later chapters, it appears again. In other words, it was to make the laws and statutes more authentic when, as with the Ten Commandments, they came from Sinai. By the way, that's also true of some of the sacrosanct songs which we sing every once in a while, as if they were written at Sinai. We call them Misinai tunes. But let's get back to this week's portion. While we're talking about Sinai and the connection to the subjects in this week's portion, there are a couple of more to consider before going into particulars. What is the relationship to the sabbatical year? Well, the sentence, when you come into the land that I'm about to give you, the land shall keep a Sabbath to the Lord. 6 years you should sow your fields and prune your vineyards and gather the yield, but the 7th year there shall be an absolute Sabbath for the land. And goes on to say exactly how that is to be done. Also, Moses reminds the people that they must release their slaves after 7 years, as God saved the Jews or the Israelites from slavery in Egypt. This is a correction to Sinai and the connection of it. And therefore, the scholars say Moses invoked it at the beginning of this parasha. What interested me next was that the Haftarah chosen by the Sephardic community to accompany this portion was from the book of Jeremiah, chapter 32, which deals with the prophet's anxiety at the time of the Babylonian exile to sell his family's property to his uncle so that it would remain in the family's possession, which at that time meant forever. This connects the Torah portion edict that property should stay in the family at least until the sabbatical year. Now, since this law presented many problems and was later renounced, so that when a Jew owned property, he could keep it even though a sabbatical year occurred. In ancient times, in most societies outside of Israel, all property belonged to the king, and you could buy it from him, but would have to return it at his will. So the entire subject of ownership became an important subject. The Jews, however, felt that since God created the world, all land belonged belonged to God, and one owned legitimately by the family could not be taken away except for reasons of bankruptcy and other financial problems. But this property would have to be returned to the family when the situation was resolved. By the way, this was a means of fighting homelessness and extreme poverty, which we still have to learn. There are two more important discussions here. The first is about slavery. Slavery for Jews was never meant for life, meaning that in the sabbatical year after someone had served a master for 7 years, he or she would be freed. This was one of the responses of the sabbatical year and the responsibility of each master. The other, which I've already mentioned, happened in the sabbatical year, was the leaving of the agricultural lands, unseeded and fallow, and whatever grew on them by itself was to be given to the poor without their paying a cent for it, or whatever the shekel was. This was an agricultural practice only practiced by the Israelites, and of course was taken up later by many other ancient peoples, as sometimes is done in certain parts of Asia still. The discussion of the Jubilee year is also in this week's portion, but since we have much evidence that it was rarely, if ever, practiced, I feel that it is not as important as, for instance, the entire discussion of ownership. When we look at the history of ownership, it is important for us to look how the permission to own property was so valuable during the time of Judah, before the Babylonian exile. And then with the return of the people with Ezra and Nehemiah, and what happened after the Jews were expelled in 70 AD. Here we must look at the very stringent laws passed in every country where Jews settled. I'm not sure that we're really aware of it. Without exceptions, Jews were not able to own property, even their own homes, for hundreds of years in Europe and Asia. They were not even able to own their own cemeteries. There's a report out of 18th century Britain that Jews had to travel 300 miles from one city to another to bury their dead because the British king did not allow them to own land except in one province. This was the situation until the Napoleonic Wars. At the beginning of the 19th century, when only court Jews, a minuscule number of persons in Europe, were able to own their homes and even own a bank account. In the city where I was born, Mannheim, Germany, the Elector of Baden, who was the ruler of the city, was defeated by the French in the 18th century and exiled to Holland. There he met some Jewish merchants and saw how skillful they were in trade and commerce. So when he was reinstated and brought back from exile, he brought with him quite a few Jewish merchants from Holland and promised them the ownership of property, which became the reason they returned with him and accepted his offer. According to the history of the city, this was the first granting of private property to Jews in Germany and began the growth of the Jewish community in Mannheim, where I was born. There is in the Parasha Bahar Sinai a discussion of the sabbatical year and its importance to a person for renewal of body and spirit. I'd like to close with a personal story of a sabbatical. For anyone in academia, the sabbatical year, which in many universities comes up for faculty every 7 years, is an important perk and should give the person a year off with pay. The Simon Guggenheim Foundation gives a wonderful prize every year to quite a few professors who qualify. This prize, or rather grant, pays for one's salary plus many other expenses during the sabbatical, especially if your home university does not cover all of it. One, of course, has to apply, and it usually takes many years to finally be lucky enough to be given one of these grants. Well, it took me 2 times 7 years, in other words, 14 years of applications to the foundation to finally land this wonderful sabbatical grant. I was thrilled and decided to take my family for a year to Vienna and work there. Before leaving the country, one of my very close friends congratulated me and said, and I quote, "You know, an additional benefit for a sabbatical with the Guggenheim grant is that you don't have to pay US taxes if you spend most of the time in a foreign country," unquote. Wow, I thought. What a great relief. No taxes and a huge check every month from the foundation to keep. I reveled in this whole extraordinary financial situation until I arrived back home to find a $10,000 bill from the IRS in my mailbox, which at my salary at the time took me a few years to repay. It was 10 years in all. By the way, this was not discussed in the parasha today, but I wanted to say that the sabbatical year, which was discussed in great detail, is a wonderful tool, and in everyone's life, it renews spirit and the whole life. However, please remember, if you should get such a grant and a sabbatical to boost at any time in the United States, it is not tax-free. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Sam. I'm so grateful to have you as my rabbi this evening. I think we all are. And I'm also looking forward to hearing more about this parsha from my rabbi tomorrow, Max, who's going to be teaching us as well on Parshat Bahar. So lots more learning to do. We learned from Sam Adler last week that if we do not count the Omer every day between Passover and Shavuot, we do not get cheesecake or cheese blintzes if you were here. This is a lesson that was taught to him as a child, that if you do not count the Omer every day, you do not merit your cheesecake at Shavuot, so we better do it. It's on page 570. Counting the Omer is a wonderful way to keep track of our harvests, or if we're not farmers, it's also another way to make sure that we make every day count, counting the days in between Passover and Shavuot. On page 570, Hineni muchan umzuman lekayem mitzvat aseh shel sfirat haomer. I am ready to fulfill the mitzvah of counting the Omer. Will you join in the blessing with me? Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sfirat haomer. Our praise to you, Adonai, sovereign of all, who hallows us with mitzvot, commanding us to count the Omer. Hayom chamisha ushloshim yom, shehim chamisha shavuot laomer. Today is 35 days, which are 5 weeks of the Omer, which means that we're more than halfway there. We're more than halfway to Sinai, to enlightenment, so we can start to get excited. So we're going to continue now with a very special blessing for a very special person who is celebrating, or celebrated last week, a very special birthday. So I would like to invite Gail Miro to the bima, accompanied by her husband, Jay. And I am going to open the ark, but I'd invite you all for the moment to remain seated. Eloheinu ve'Elohei avotenu ve'imotenu, our God and God of our ancestors, we come before you in joy and celebration on the joyous occasion of Gail's 80th birthday. Let us take a moment to look back in gratitude on the many accomplishments and achievements, celebrations and milestones achieved, on the challenges faced and conquered, the justice pursued, the friendships strengthened, the art created, the journeys taken, the love given and received. On the occasion of this milestone, let us also look ahead to continued health, to your strong partnership with Jay, to continued travel adventures, workouts, volunteering, cherished time with family and friends. On this special birthday, we ask for God's blessing on your continued journey, for a life filled with meaning, purpose, and blessing as you continue on your remarkable path, touching so many people and continuing to work to make the world a better place. Gail, it's my privilege to ask God's blessing upon you in the words hallowed by our faith, the words of the threefold benediction from the Torah. Yevarechecha Adonai ve'yishmerecha. May God bless you and keep you. Ya'er Adonai panav elecha v'yechunecha. May God's presence shine upon you and be gracious to you. Yisa Adonai panav elecha v'yaseim lecha shalom. May God be with you always and grant you the gift of peace. And let us all say, Amen. Let's wish Gail a big mazel tov. You can go back to your seat. Simon tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simon tov, mazel tov, mazel tov, simon tov, mazel tov, simon tov. Yehei lanu, yehei lanu, yehei lanu, u'lechol Yisrael. Yehei lanu, u'lechol Yisrael.
Let's all turn to page 586 and rise for the Oleinu.
Aleinu leshabeach ladon hakol, latet gedula liotzer bereshit, shelo asanu kegoyei haratzot, velo samanu b'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gor aleinu kechohamonam, v'anachnu korim u'mishachavim u'modim livnei melech malchei hamlachim hakadosh baruch hu. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד ושמו אחד ושמו אחד ושמו אחד.
Please be seated.
Page 593. In nature's ebb and flow, God's eternal law abides. When tears dim our vision or grief clouds our understanding, we often lose sight of God's eternal plan. Yet we know that growth and decay, life and death, all reveal a purpose. God, who is our support in the struggles of life, is also our hope in death. We have set God before us and shall not despair. In God's hands are the souls of all the living and the spirits of all flesh. Under God's protection we abide, and by God's love are we comforted. O life of our life, soul of our soul, cause your light to shine into our hearts and fill our spirits with abiding trust in you.
Our thoughts turn now to those who are no longer with us. We're especially mindful of those who have died in recent days or weeks, for whom the period of Shiva or Shloshim is being observed. Louise Barkan, Len Rosenberg, and Ellen Goldstone Burson. We also think of those whose yahrzeit, the anniversary of death, falls on this Shabbat. Dr. Robert L. Abrams, Samuel Baer, Celia Caden Baer, Celia Berenson, Albert A. Berg, Louis Berman, Virginia F. Binzer, Edith Romanoff-Bort, Sylvia Balshone Brown, Jerry Chabler, Ellen S. Cooper, Bertha C. Dreyfus, Paul M. Epstein, Michael B. Fain, Lillian W. Feinberg, Molly Fischler, Geneva J. Friedmar, Mildred B. Green, Norma Gross, Michelle Hamilton, Lenore B. Harris, Julius Hess, Rosal Hess, Erwin Hess, Dorothy Sklar Jalan, Sally F. Cadens, Erwin A. Clark, Sarah Levitan, Francis R. Levy, Harry May, Joseph Miller, Ida Miller, Florence Munitz, Norville Nis Rappaport, Estelle Robbins, Lois Romanoff, Samuel S. Schwab, Chris Schneider, Hattie Silverman, Muriel E. Stenbuck, Joseph Stevens, Clifford Striff, Edward Thal, Norman R. Thal, and Goldie Waxman. We rise now as one community and recite the Kaddish Yatom, the Mourner's Kaddish, page 598. Yit Gadal v'yit Hadash Shemei Rabbah, Velma Divarah Hirute v'yamlich Malchute, V'chaye Chon u'v'yomei Chon u'v'chaye Dechol Beit Yisrael, Ba'agala u'v'zman Kari v'imru Amen. Yehei Shemei Rabbah mevarach le'olam u'lalmei al-maya, Yiparach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh, V'yit hadar, v'yit aleh, v'yit halal, shemei dekudsha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbachata v'nechamata, da'amiran be'alma v'imru amen. Yehei shalom rabba min shamaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. Oseh shalom b'mroma, huyaseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru amen. May the source of peace grant peace to all who mourn. Going to be Adon Olam on page 625. Please join with us. Adon Olam asher mala v'terem kol yitzir nivra.
Levado
בידו אפקיד רוחי בעת אישן בעירה ואם רוחי גביעתי אדוני לי ולא אירא.
Please join us in the lobby for Kiddush and Motzi. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.